thank you for coming, and thank you very much for having us all here, British Wool. It's going to be a fantastic day, and I'm really excited about this panel. For those that don't know me, I'm Kate Hills. I'm the founder of Make It British. I've always been a massive champion of UK manufacturing and making in the UK. I have to say, I've got a couple of things I want to tell you before we get to our panellists. Firstly, I'm wearing a jumper, so I'm totally on brand today. British wool, Laxton's yarn, and knitted at Ubers knitwear in the Lake District. And unfortunately, the lovely Kate, who was supposed to be on our panel with us, is stuck on a flipping train coming down from the Lake District to London. So she's here in spirit because I've got her jumper on. And I also say that I was not paid to wear this jumper. I'd already bought one from her in the summer when I visited her amazing micro factory, and I've worn it pretty much every single day. And I thought, right, I need that one in another colour. And it was only as I'd ordered this second one that I then found out I was not only chairing this panel, but that Laxton's and Kate were going to be on it. So I say, I was not paid to sit here and wear this jumper. I am genuinely a fan of British wool. It is amazing. It's flipping hot today, though, I have to say, so if I start sweating. Okay, and the second thing I want to say is I founded Make It British in 2011. And back then, I had lots of people starting to contact me saying, I really want to use traceable British wool. And I remember speaking to the guys at British Wool, and I was saying, look, all these designers want to start using British wool, and they want it to be traceable, and they want to know what farm it's come from. And at that point, it was like, no chance. So isn't it amazing that we're here today, 15 years later, and we're having this conversation with spinners and manufacturers and designers about actually using traceable and British wool in garments. So fantastic. Right, so I'm going to go over to now stop talking and go to my amazing panel. I want each of you to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your company's involvement with using British wool.
Okay, so I'm Carly and I'm from Laxton's Yarns. We are a 120-year-old worsted spinning mill based in Yorkshire, and we've been using British wool for over 100 years.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Murphy. I'm the founder of the Albion Knitting Company, which we established in London in 2014, reshoring part of our manufacturing from China to London. And after 10 years producing in London, at the end of 24, we decided to relocate the factory to the Isle of Man, where we are currently knitting all our goods, and recently opened the Albion Knitting School just down the road in Clerkenwell.
Hi there, my name's Joe McCann. I'm from a company called Abraham Moon & Sons. We're a vertical textile manufacturer based over in West Yorkshire.
Amazing, right. So I'm going to kick off with you, Carly, because it all starts with the yarn, doesn't it? So tell me the history of Laxton's using British wool. How has that all come about? Where did the investment come from? Because I know that Laxton's have invested a lot in like a brand new mill over the last few years. So yeah, tell me how it's all come about.
So I think because we're a British manufacturer and kind of sustainability is that the kind of core of our business, British wool just fits within that. We have done a huge investment in machinery and dyeing, finishing to be able to get the best characteristics out of the British wool. Probably around 58% of our business at the moment from our yarn, from our bespoke, machine knitting, weaving, and we do a bit of miscellaneous, is British wool.
Wow.
And yeah, I think for us, we just need people to understand that it doesn't have the same feel and luster as a merino. So we try to get you to come to us at the beginning so we can be part of the design process with the yarn to get the best out of it.
And are you noticing that more and more designers are coming to you and making those requests?
Absolutely. I think because sustainability is the key now, more and more people are wanting to use British manufacturers. And for outerwear, accessories, British wool has the strength, the luster. There's lots of different breeds. British wool is the only wool in the world that you buy from breed. Everywhere else is bought either on Micron. So, yes.
Fantastic. That's great that it's such a big percentage of the business now. That's grown just in the last few years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Chris, then, Albion Knitwear, you obviously work with a lot of, I don't think you can even name some of the amazing designers and brands that you knit for, but very prestigious. Are more of them asking to use British wool? And if not, why not?
I think the profile of British wool, it is increasing, but what a lot of designers are searching for is not easily provided by typical British sheep breeds. If you look at the micron of typical Australian merino, for example, which is industry standard 19.5 micron merino, designers expect to see fine wools for luxury markets. So I think from a designs perspective, designers need to sort of understand the nature of British wool and how it can be used in ways that will suit the fashion market. We do have some incredible rare breed sheeps, Blue Face Leicester. I know there are probably people here today who are doing a lot of work trying to improve the micron of Romney sheep, for example. But from a design perspective, I would reach out to the design community and say, if you want to use British wool, you need to think of creative ways to knit it, like your tension, for example. You mentioned the sweater you're wearing. It's very warm. British wool of 30 plus micron, knit 5 gauge, is going to be warm. So, if we want to expand the markets, if we want to sell British wool more commercially to a wider marketplace, either the farmers are going to have to start breeding sheep with a finer micron, but designers also need to think about, well, how can we use 30 plus micron wool and knit it in such a way that it's more open and find a more commercial use for it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned to me earlier when we were chatting before we came in here that your dream was actually to use Isle of Man sheep to knit with. How could we make that happen?
Well, it'll be a big challenge. I'll probably have to buy a farm, I think. But, Lockton, some people may know there's a very rare, beautiful sheep on the Isle of Man called the Lockton, which I think came with the Vikings in the 5th century. It's more of a hill sheep. They're quite wild sheep. It's not a large animal, not particularly suitable for the meat industry. And as a result, the breed has become almost extinct a number of times. But it's an incredibly iconic symbol of the Isle of Man with its 4 Viking horns. But there's only around probably 3,500 sheep left on the island. So, unless somebody, makes the effort to go into selective breeding, it's not suitable for meat, it's not suitable for soft knitwear. So unless somebody makes the effort to improve that breed, it probably will become extinct. Yeah.
Never say never, though. I'm all for positivity.
I'm on it.
I don't think we would have been here 15 years ago, and look where we are now. So, so Joe, then, Moons, very historic mill. We've been going for a very long time. When did you first start weaving with British wool, and what was the demand there, and that's what made you started to do it, or did you start weaving and then see if the customers wanted it, and then it's gone from there? Which way round has it been?
With 185 years of history, we've invariably used British wool through the longevity of the company. What we had found is increasingly we were more reliant on New Zealand, South Africa, Australia for wool. But I would say in the past 3 or 4 years, we've really wanted to reshore a lot of the wool sourcing aspect of our business. For us, and kind of echoing a little bit of the message earlier, the softness in the micron is important. Despite us being, kind of renowned for a tweed white look, the hand feel has got to be there. The recent project that we've kind of looked into, we've really kind of championed the Romney lambs in particular. It really works for us. We're using that across multiple categories, so fabric for apparel, in the accessories side, and also trialing for the interior business as well.
Brilliant. So there's a lot of talk then happening about the softness. It's always the conversation, isn't it? I mean, it's always from British wool, it's only ever good for carpets, and obviously knitwear like this totally proves it wrong. From a technical aspect then, Carly, and I'm not sure, what can be done? What do we need to do to get to that point where we can change those perceptions with designers and retailers?
I think it all depends on, the twists. We can hank dye, which has a wet process, so that kind of softens it. So we do a yarn across all of our sectors called Wool Trace. That is 100% Romney, and we do 100% Blueface. That's fully traceable back to farm. And what we're finding with that is that's kind of going into markets where we wouldn't have got it in before because of the softness. So your Blueface is a 27 micron, but if we're doing that through a hank dyeing process, we're getting the best quality of that yarn. So it's hitting the softness within the machine knit world.
And how does that affect the cost, particularly for designers that want to use traceable, but then go, it's a bit like if you want to make something in the UK, and then people's first reaction is, oh, that costs a bit too much. How?
I'm going to be honest, it's on the higher end, but what we've done recently is we've put this as a stock yarn. So what we're not asking designers to do now is make a bespoke range. So you can buy as small as a 7 kilo dye lot, or from us you can buy, if you're buying stock shades, you can just do 1 kilo. So it's putting it in front of people where it wouldn't have been before, because you've not got to commit to 200 kilos.
Brilliant. And what about for connecting with, dyeing and the whole processes within the chain? Is that?
So we own the dye vessels, so that full traceability goes from everywhere. So one of our sheep's off ranges, we commit to it being a 50-mile radius from it being sorted at British Wool all the way through to the finished yarn.
Which is fantastic, isn't it? Especially with digital product passports coming in.
Yeah, and 50 years ago, where we are in Yorkshire, there would have been 80 to 100 spinning mills. We're the only one left. So we're trying to innovate and make sure that we can get in front of the right people with the right products, and constantly going back and tweaking things to make it work.
And the million-dollar question is, has there been any government investment?
Not at the moment.
What do we need to do to get the government to see
I think the community needs to come together. I was recently at a panel with the Yorkshire businesses, and about 7 of us turned up. So I think it's just making the commitment from the industry to, if we can get in front of those people, getting together and taking the time out to do that.
Yeah, because there's so much untapped potential,
Absolutely.
Isn't there? Yeah. Brilliant. So going back to you, Jo, and on Moons again, talking about the sort of customers that are now buying British wool, is it across the board? Is it small? Because I'm getting a lot of younger and new designers particularly interested in the traceability. But we had a conversation before about the whole M&S used to use so much from Abraham Moon. Who is it particularly that's looking at using the British wool fabrics? Can we get the retailers like M&S to use it again at scale? And so it's not just, at smaller projects.
Yeah, I think similar to Carly, we took a decision to put British wool products into our stocked ranges. I guess what we wanted to do is to really take away any potential barriers, or as many barriers as possible, to stop people at least experimenting with British wool. Ultimately, we are in a very chicken and egg situation. The more demand that can be driven from retailers and brands into British wool, it allows their investment through the supply chain. Coming back to the question you mentioned before, and I didn't quite answer, we decided to go into British wool again, kind of off our own backs, in the sense that it just didn't feel right. We were having to cart wool from all around the world when there's an abundance of beautiful wool just all around us. So, yeah, from our perspective, we'd be delighted to engage in conversation with brands and retailers just to be able to say, look, British wool serves a phenomenal purpose, particularly in a woven product, particularly for outerwear, for tailoring. And also, particularly in the Romney lambs as well, it just doesn't have that coarseness that people expect it to do. And we've had to get the product in front of people to kind of change that mindset that they've gone into with. And even still, it's a constant. Every year we'll get the same British wool product out and we're like, come on, guys. But we've had some really positive signs in the upcoming, we work in 2 seasons for the next year's bulk orders. interesting sampling from a variety of brands, both in the UK, US, and in Europe.
Oh, sampling though. How can we get them to go from the sampling stage? Because what manufacturers don't need lots of sampling, do they? They need orders and production orders. So
yeah, and I mean, you know, I think there's a big thanks to the British Wool team. Like, we've been working closely with them for the promotion of it. You know, there's a constant reinforcement of, you know, buy local to some extent. It definitely does seem to carry more weight for us with UK type customers, you know, as does a British made product, full stop, to be honest. But it's just chasing, pushing, encouraging. You know, we go out of our way to make a lot of promotional garments now to help show the product in situ. Without that, I think it's a very tough sell, but, you know, it's just perseverance.
yeah, but you did mention international markets there, so that's an interesting one. Do you think that almost the British wool brand, as it were, and that is worth more, a bit like, you know, having a made in UK label sometimes is more valued overseas than it is actually by the Brits? Do you think that's the same with British wool to some extent?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to get to the bottom of, actually, with some of the brands that have bought into the British wool range that we've taken to market, is what provoked them to take it. Was it the design, the hand? The particular British wool that we offer is in a lovely kind of chunky count. You know, it's got a very lovely look to it. We are trying to ask the questions. People are cagey. They're always cagey. You know, and it's early days for us. You know, like I say, the stock investment is significant. You know, our minimums mean that to put 10 shades into a stock collection, you're talking thousands of meters of cloth, plus the yarn that goes alongside it. And, you know, obviously we make the yarn by the tops, everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I suppose that is one of the things when I see the beautiful collection of fabrics that Moons have done in the British wool fibres, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to see some more colour or to see some of your tweeds in the British wool as well? But like you say, it's partly the stock investment, isn't there? Is there any other barriers towards why it's not available in a wider range of fabrics?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I mean, we've invested, you know, constantly. I sit between the commercial and the creative side of the business, and, you know, if we invest too much into shades, too many colours, you know, we get a massive telling off. But no, for us, one of the big blockers at the moment, and sorry, Graham, RWS is a complicated subject. You know, we're international. We sell to a lot of big brands globally, and particularly in a category such as a woven fabric. RWS is obviously kind of more aligned to merino, particularly for knitwear. It's so neat from a retailer's perspective to badge it all under RWS. And it's just that challenge now to say, look, you know, what we're doing in the UK is just as important, just as equal. But they've done a fantastic job at ultimately marketing that to the retailer. So for us to make a more significant switch, we need either two things. You know, the traceable program to be seen in the same light and to be I guess, taken alongside the RWS standard or RWS British wool. I wouldn't, you know, it's not, again, we have to go as the market goes to some extent.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, I mean, Carly, do you want to explain RWS and...
Good luck.
I think Chris would like to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Go on, Chris.
It's a hot potato, that one.
How long have we got left on this panel? About 5 minutes, and we need questions.
I picked up the hot potato.
Because it does seem to be a hot potato. Go on, let's get it out in the open.
I mean, the reliable wool standard, I think anybody in the fashion industry today knows that there's a plethora of different accreditations that the industry's faced with that I think customers, manufacturers, you know, we all find it quite confusing, and certainly in the luxury industry, if you're looking at global luxury fashions, there's a big push to have these badges on the fashion products that are selling. For me, I tell my customers, you know, look, you have to make your own decision about what is genuine compliance, what is genuine sustainability, and what is virtue signaling or greenwashing. There are too many accreditations out there, way too many. And for spinners, weavers, knitters, it's really just adding a lot of cost into the supply chain. in my opinion, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have these sustainability certificates, but we need less of them, and we need genuine compliance, genuine sustainability, not a parasite economy which is taking value out of the supply chain and adding the cost to the consumer.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, really well said.
Before we go on to questions, because I haven't got a watch on, I'm looking at your amazing watch there, Carly, at the time. Can I have a point from each of you about what do you think is the main thing that we need to do to get more widespread adoption of British wool? Who wants to start that one?
Well, for us, because obviously we're most of the time the first part, I think we need to be part of the design process. I think for us, we can tweak the technicalities based on what that end product needs to look like. So if we're part of the beginning, rather than coming to you with the idea and then we've got to go and try and innovate the yarn, I think that would really help with the collaboration.
In what way, though, when you say with the designers, talk me through a little bit more about what that process might look like?
So I think from our point of view, because we can make bespoke yarn as well as having the stock yarn, I think sometimes it's what's the brief, and then let's go back to the drawing board, because it doesn't have to be the fibres that we have in our collection. We can make from other British fibres. I'll give you an example. I've got a lady who is a financial director, and she's just bought a garden centre in the Lake District.
As you do.
As you do. And she's decided that she really wants to utilise Herdwick sheep. Now, Herdwick, their fibre is extremely coarse. If you looked at that sheep, you would think there's nothing I can do with that.
They're cute, though.
They're very
gorgeous.
happy. It's my favourite.
And because
my favourite
the
too.
garden centre is on a beautiful walk, they get a lot of tourists. And when the tourists come in, a lot of Americans are wanting to buy something that they've seen on one of their walks.
Brilliant.
They came to us at the beginning. We've worked alongside them and alongside a weaver. They're now producing hunting hats, bags, gilets, and so it's almost just been part of the beginning, not right, we've got these designs, what's the yarn that fits in with that design, being kind of 3 or 4 steps ahead of where that conversation starts.
Amazing. What's the name of this garden centre? We need to give them a shout out.
It's called Grasmere Gather.
Oh, next time I go to the Lake District to
You
see
can
Kate.
pop in.
Yeah, I will pop in. Chris, over to you then. What needs to be done? But I suppose particularly with your international clients, how do we get them? I know we've touched on it earlier about softness, but
Yeah, I think we need a big effort from the growers, from the farmers. If we really want to make British wool commercially across a global market, I think there have to be some choices made by the farming community. Most farmers today breed sheep for meat. And if you look at the price of British wool, I think I did some research recently, and the price peaked in 1955 at £14 a kilo, and it has been in constant decline since then. And today you get about £1.25 for a kilo of fleece. That is not a sustainable platform for developing British wool. So it's not really surprising that nearly most of our British farmers are breeding the sheep for meat. So there's a difficult choice to be made. Unfortunately, you can't really have both. Meat sheep tend not to produce great wool, and luxury clients don't like 35 micron wool. So I'd be very interested to talk. I know there's another panel later. I think there's some British farmers who'd be out there. So I'm very interested to talk to them about how they feel about the future for selective breeding. Justine Lee, she made a fantastic book recently, The Wonder of Wool, where you can read all about every fantastic rare breed in the British Isles. But there's just not enough of it. And it's not of a micron which a lot of the fashion industry can use. And, if we want to make British wool really commercially available on a larger scale across global markets, that needs to change.
although you did say there, I'm going to pick you up on the fact that you said luxury brands don't like they want more softness. How can we then change that perception? So we can get them not just thinking in terms of it's got to be more expensive and better if it's softer, because I would disagree.
Yeah, no, you are right. I mean, the Japanese market, for example, they adore British wool. I mean, the market is quite an Anglophile market, but if you look at brands like Drake's, for example, they've been selling coarse British wool to the Japanese market for decades and doing quite well at it. But I deal with a lot of American customers, and I'm constantly putting British wool and different products in front of them that are not your typical soft, 16, 17, 19 micron products. But the American market, rightly or wrongly, does seem obsessed with softness. So I think you've got to look at it on a market-by-market basis. But designers can also do more. There are ways, I was speaking to Charles earlier. She's wearing Wensleydale wool and feels incredible. But she's a great designer. She understands what British wool is. How do you go woolen? Do you go worsted? How do you knit it? There are ways from a design and a knitting construction perspective that you can make British wool feel softer. So, the designers can work on that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is that as much as educating the manufacturers in how they can use their machines to make it, like you just say, there are ways, so you've got to be a skilled manufacturer to know that, which you obviously are, Chris.
We try our best, but to be honest, it's both. We need some softer wool from British breeds, and from a design and manufacturing perspective, we can do our best to work with what we've got. But if we're talking about really expanding the commercial possibilities of British wool, globally, there does need to be a change in the product as well.
Although Alan has just shown me a pair of socks, which was, so hi Alan, which are, what was it, British wool with a little bit of alpaca in. Everyone go and have a touch of Alan's socks later, because they are really soft. Got some soft sparkles on there. So, Joe, same question to you then. How do we get a wider adoption of British wool? What would you do?
Yeah, we're a little bit different in the context that we make cloth that's going more into kind of outerwear and jacketing, so it's not next to skin. The micron that we typically take from a Romney Lamb's perspective is fantastic for us, works really well. For us, it would just be, again, that kind of adoption from a retailer and brand perspective. The more volume that we can produce, the more we can buy, the more it stimulates the demand. So that continued promotion of British wool, showing, what it's great at. And to be honest, what's been really fantastic, seeing how this event's been merchandised, that resurgence of overcoats, tailored garments will help that tremendously. We've got a sample made up that's hanging in the Romney Lamb's wool, and, it's just phenomenal. And I'm with you, softness isn't everything, but I can appreciate in a knitted environment, it does make a big difference. I would take durability, practicality. It's a bit like denim, but it's not for everyone.
Just another point I want to pick up on about you. What Abraham Moon do, which is very clever, is you have your label, which you supply your customers, who then put it inside the coats or whatever, and it says it's Abraham Moon cloth. When they have one of your cloths that also is woven from British wool, does it mention that on the label that they have inside? Yeah,
so we worked on a special collaboration label with British wool. That's something we really wanted to hammer home. And it's a case where people will definitely take that label now it's available. And we've just put a lot of energy into redoing a lot of our woven labelling to incorporate, and to be really proud of the provenance of the fibre, as well as also making it clear that it's a fabric made by Moon.
Yes, so there's a little bit of what I call fake it British there, isn't
Preempting your question.
Yeah, brick washing. In other words, people putting your lovely Abraham Moon, great big label inside their coat. And I get people contacting me saying, I've just bought this coat and it's made by Abraham Moon, because that's what they think. And they bought it from, I won't name some of the retailers. But I've looked inside and it's got made in India written in it. And of course, what they don't realise is that you're not the clothing manufacturer, you're just the fabric weaver. So there's a little bit of, sometimes I think, brands riding on the fact that they've used your fantastic British cloth, but then shipped it all offshore to get it produced. So I suppose, what can we do to get more of the brands to use the garment manufacturers as well with your cloth rather than sending it overseas?
Which garment makers? I mean, that's
Hey,
been a
there's
decline.
loads. I can give you a whole list if you want.
But no, I think sensibly there, it's a tricky one. I mean, what do people want to see? For us, we are still a bulk manufacturer. Sure, we could go small scale, but we are a bulk manufacturer. We're a really large scale employer in our area. We're about 200 people strong. So, that is important for us, and we have to produce a lot of cloth each week. For us, it's about education or working with the retailers to get that market message correct. I wore something quite appropriate. I'm wearing a Scottish cashmere. It's not Scottish cashmere, but it's made in Scotland. But yeah, the same thing applies with our product. We just have to make clear it's the fabric. And, to some extent, yes, I would love to see more onshoring of garment making, but at the same time, we need to sell cloth.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
No, I wasn't getting at you. I was getting more at the retailers that try and, use your branding to imply something that's quite
I'll let
different.
you pick that fight.
Yeah. Right, I'm realising we're chatting for hours and we need to get the audience, give them a chance to ask some questions. Actually, have we got anyone? Graham, are you roving mic man? Look at that. Who's got a question for our amazing panellists? Lady down here at the front, put her hand. Oh, one's right up back too. That's a big old bike.
No. So this is open to everyone, but following the protests that took place earlier this week, do you think that the government's introduction of inheritance tax will threaten the production of British wool?
Who wants to handle that one?
I'd say go closest to the supply chain first.
Oh, poor Carly.
Absolutely, it will, cause a problem because more and more farmers are trying to find a new role because it just doesn't work for them. A lot of them, it's been handed down from generation to generation and they're kind of trying to stick by it because they have no other qualifications or, so I think it is a big problem. I think hopefully we've seen a big increase in the price that farmers being paid for British wool recently. There's a big spike in that. That may help. I don't know if it'll bridge the gap.
We've got a very experienced farmer in the room who probably can answer that question better.
If we had any farmers here.
I'll give it to Frank, if I may, for that question.
Oh, brilliant.
Sorry.
Okay.
Over to you, Frank.
Well, you may or may not know, but the number of sheep has declined everywhere in the world over the last few years. And we're probably at the lowest number in this country that we've ever seen. Similarly, then, also the amount of wool has declined. So it is a major issue. But listening to the panel, you probably don't realise that with British wool, it's never been, you did mention that it's never been assessed on micron. And so it's just graded by very professional graders. There is one here. But they won't tell you whether that's below 30 micron and how much it is below 30 micron. And so I am actually breeding sheep now that are below 30 micron, and they are meat sheep. You can't get away from the fact that you have to use a meat sheep to actually produce wool as well. And it can be done. But I'll maybe talk a bit more about that later. But on the issue of the politics, politics is getting in the way of agriculture very much. And it's one of the reasons why you're seeing massive increases in the price of food, because the amount of production is falling. But it's not only in this country, it's falling around the world. So just be very careful of what you wish for.
Be careful what you eat and where you buy your food from, I think, as well. Yeah. Right, next question. Lady at the front here, wearing a lovely British wool jumper.
Thank you. This is a question for you, Carly. So I'm looking to get some welly socks made. I found a manufacturer. However, I'm really struggling to find British wool that can be spun into quite a fine metric count. And I've spoken to quite a lot of places and it's a real struggle. Is this something that is a struggle? Is it something that you might be able to help with at Laxton's? What's the possibility?
Do you know what count?
Well, that is a question. It's been a bit of a trial and error, but he's sort of suggesting like a 1.7, a 2.14, something that's quite fine.
That isn't a problem for us. Worsted spinning, the issue we come against is the length of the fibre. So we have to do a fibre pull to make sure that we can spin it, because we don't add any oil or lubricants. But I don't know why you're coming across that problem. T414s or 7s shouldn't be a problem. We work with a lot of people who use our yarn for socks. So
do you think there's an education piece for some of the manufacturers here? Because obviously they're not all here today, like people like
and
Chris
I don't think we're connected enough. I think there's conversations had on specific projects. James RMD talks about the good days when they'd all get together for certain campaign for wool and the whole industry would get together. I don't think that's a thing anymore, and I think that's what's missing.
I used to have my trade show, but COVID put a stop to that.
There you go, COVID.
But you're right.
But talk to me.
There needs to be more wool events where the whole supply chain gets together.
Yeah.
And there's the Great British Wool Revival website, which is brilliant at mapping the supply chain. But I think you've still got some of the perceptions about British wool that some of the manufacturers and the weavers have not got over yet.
And if you don't ask those questions during those settings, you just keep with the thought process.
But I hope if we sit here in like another 5 years' time,
Absolutely.
Then it will be different.
Yeah.
Who else got a question?
As a sheep farmer, I just want to say that in a time when farmers are very downtrodden, it is reassuring to hear that there's all these people working in the background to make wool, I guess, more desirable. But we have seen that wool is at a 9-year price high, I think, I've just read, which sounds an amazing headline. But let me tell you, on the ground, it doesn't touch the sides of all the costs associated with wool. We've kind of touched upon meat versus wool. There's a trade-off. And perhaps, Chris, there was an emphasis on farmers doing more. I think we're already just trying to survive. How on earth do we financially incentivise wool over the meat thing? Because we're being told to do more in every facet of our business. And to be honest, wool isn't on the radar. We've burnt ours before. It's quite a heartbreaking thing to do, but I'm not the only one.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. And isn't it amazing to see a young female farmer? Yay!
As well, Charlotte, farmer.
Who wants to take that question?
I guess from our perspective, again, that demand aspect is absolutely key. For us, the idea is that we want to be able to, and it sounds counterproductive as a manufacturer, but pay more for the raw material. It all goes around at the end of the day. But yeah, without the demand, it's really tricky for us to produce more volume and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would love to see there is less, just like we have, barriers put in the way to being able to sell the product, less for you guys to be able to farm and then sell the product on too. Certainly, British farming has got our full backing, and yeah, it's a shame that it is getting to that point where wool is consistently burned.
I think
Chris,
both of the brands at the front, sort of Laxton's and Moons, they're paying a premium for the wool. So because it's traceable, we charge a premium over and above the normal auction price. So the farmer, that's returned to the farmer. Yeah, it's not going to change the economics massively, but it's one area where we do have a little bit of control over the price. I think some of it's down to the consumers' buying habits as well. Fast fashion has been a big thing. If you look at the British wool price and the correlation of the introduction of synthetics, not an excuse, it's a reality. You can pretty much map that. It's a perfect correlation in terms of the lines. So it's sort of getting consumers to start thinking about what they're buying, buy more sensibly, buy once, buy better, I think was the old saying. So I guess there's a big education piece.
Yeah, there's a great, amazing graph that someone shared on social media, which shows as well how long each takes to decompose, like polyester versus
it doesn't,
wool.
does it? We don't even know how long it takes.
Any more questions? Oh, a couple up the back there.
I think this lady had her hand up.
No one's told us to stop yet. We'll keep talking.
So how do you think we can preserve traditional craftsmanship and small-scale makers' practices when upscaling British wool? Do you think these crafts are likely to die out?
Oh, that's a great question.
Really good question.
Yeah. Who wants to take that one?
I mean, I think the traditional skills and craftsmanship has to be founded on small-scale manufacturers, because this country's never going to compete with Bangladesh or China or, mass manufacturing markets with a surplus of cheap labour. So I think from the whole supply chain, from the farmers, the fleece, to the fibre, to the yarn, we're basically looking at a bespoke industry in this country. The volume of wool we produce, the number of spinners, weavers, knitters, tailors that we have today, I think it's only because of people like that we do keep going at all. And from a design perspective, the future for British wool is not with Uniqlo. It's with people who make a product locally made with love, sold to people who are willing to pay more for a British product made sustainably with passion.
That is so well said. Couldn't have said it better myself, Chris. That's amazing. That's so true. Yeah, and that's where I see the future of UK manufacturing and British wool. It is in the growth of the smaller businesses and the amount of smaller businesses who are now, after all, they were the first ones, I think, that started adopting British wool, weren't they? Who were the first people you started spinning for? The first, can you remember when Laxton started spinning with British wool and it was traceable? Can you remember?
100 years ago.
No, but more recently, in the more recent revival, who were some of the first?
I think Alan was there then 100 years ago. Do you remember?
Who were some of the? It was some of the smaller designers, but the early adopters of the fully traceable British wool. I've put you on the spot here now,
Really
Carly, haven't I? Alan, do you know the answer to that one?
The first one's Carly.
But it certainly would have been the smaller brands,
Absolutely.
than the bigger ones, wouldn't it? That's where it all starts.
It started as a smaller brand, and now there might be more of a well-known brand that we recognise.
Yeah.
But at the early stages, it would have been a brand that's unknown, I would have said. I can't actually put the names to it.
But yeah, the craftsmanship and the small businesses, that's why I think the future of local is, definitely. Oh, sorry, we're chatting. We've got more questions.
Really, it's not sort of a question, it's a point following on from what has already been said. The UK's got 68 native breeds of sheep. That's more indigenous sheep breeds than any other country in the entire world. Now, if there was the trend and it moved towards the meat, because that's what everyone was saying that was more valuable, that happened. I think the support needs to come from brands, and the story needs to be there for the farmers, because they actually need to know that the support is there if they're going to make a big financial change. And let's say, for example, change from Texels to Wensleydales, for example, because they've got a finer fleece. And I think in the sort of narrative that is out there at the moment, farmers need to know that these brands have got a demand for that fleece, that finer fleece. It needs to be there for the farmers to see, for them to make that change and that choice. And it can be done. Rare breeds can be kept commercially to produce meat and wool. It just needs to be done right. And a lot of these rare and native breeds now are feeding into regenerative agriculture, which is the new thing, you see. And this is going back to how it was done hundreds of years ago. So we need to change our mindset, I think, to support that bespoke heritage craft rather than mass-produced fast fashion. But that starts with the support of brands saying, you know what, farmers, we've got your back, we support what you're doing. Let's start keeping native breeds for modern needs. That's what we need to look at there, I think.
And I think more small businesses are definitely doing that, without a doubt. It's just that, again, they need a kind of collective voice for it, which obviously British wool are helping do.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to add on to that, I think certainly our business, we've been guilty at perhaps not looking at the farming aspect of it, whereas now, we're spending an awful lot of time really understanding supply chain through and through. When we took the British wool product to market, we made a big song and dance about, that end-to-end traceability. It's in one of our new stock cards, of which Tony, who farmed the wool, is proudly on show. He's probably been visible to some of the best brands worldwide, I would say. But yeah, we need to do more. Wouldn't
it be great if there was a TV campaign with cute British sheep and then British wool showing the whole supply chain so that everyone could see what is involved, and that needs a TV show. I actually think, talking of Game of Wool, the TV show, I don't know if you've seen it, about knitting, it's missed a trick. Is it going to have a British Wool Week? I want to know. Has anyone...
We did try.
It needs a British Wool Week on Game of Wool. Otherwise, it's Game of Acrylic, isn't it?
I just had a question about, you mentioned Uniqlo and fast fashion. Are people prepared to pay the price for real wool? Because the price of clothes has become so skewed by cheap synthetics. How do you tackle that?
Can I answer that one? I think it's very much about an education on a cost per wear. Like I say, I bought one of these Ubus jumpers from Kate in the summer. I'm not ashamed to say it. I have worn it pretty much every single day since I bought it. It's much better than wearing a sweatshirt. I barely need to wash it. I hope I don't smell. There's so many, I think if we can get that education across, it's the same with, buying something that's well made and that lasts. And so, but that doesn't last forever, that it goes into landfill. I think again, it's down to the marketing story, isn't it? So, because it is about cost per wear. If I've got to wrap it up. Okay, great. Right, I will wrap it. Let's wrap that up then, shall we, everyone? It was so amazing to have you three on the panel. You were absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.